It's Devlog 7 of my multiplayer gun building game. Since Devlog 1, we've added systems, a load of gun parts, crazy abilities, and game maps that I've never truly been happy with. So this time I'm locking myself down until I create some game maps that I'm happy with. I'm going to spend a lot of time researching, designing, texturing, and tweaking game maps that hopefully I'll be proud of. My previous map designs were very basic, so let's not repeat the past and do some research this time. Really? A PowerPoint presentation? Gotta be kidding. One of the takeaways I got from this were single scan to multi-scan rooms. Single scan rooms obviously means one scan to clear the room, and multi-scan means the player needs to check a lot of corners, which is not ideal for casual play. He talked a lot about the difference between casual and competitive maps, and also maps like Dust 2 that could do both, which is what I'm gonna aim to do. The main difference with competitive maps is they have more complex spaces, which is probably why my silver ass never left Dust 2, and higher ranked players like playing Nuke. Another point I found online was that good maps are not just spawn points with boxes in between. Damn, I feel called out because this is literally my old map. So I started with the block out. As you can see, I created a lot of large buildings for the barrier because I wanted the player to feel like he's in an abandoned city. After playtesting a little, I realized that with all the movement abilities in the game, the player could get on top of almost any building. I also saw an Overwatch dev talk about this issue with characters like Father. Now I'm going to have to create invisible barriers in some places, but for the most part, I want the environment to clearly show the available space. So the solution for this was simple: make the buildings taller. After I was happy with the block out, I started modeling and texturing the buildings. And this is where I lied to you. Well, I guess in a virtual world, it's hard to call anything a lie without defining the truth. So let's just define the truth as an environment that uses vertices to show its edges and curves. Now, what I do for performance and efficiency is use shading and normal maps to create the illusion of this. Which is why I don't actually spend much time modeling, but a lot of time texturing. And when I say texturing, I'm not actually creating a hand-painted texture for each building like I do other models. But instead, I'm using UV unwrapping to fit a seamless texture to the model. For example, if I wanted to paint fire onto the character, I could UV unwrap the texture normally and hand paint fire to each of his limbs, or I could paint one area of fire and move the UVs onto the painted area, which saves space and time. Hopefully that makes some sense. Teaching isn't my strong suit, unlike the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Whether you're modeling a world, animating your first character, or diving deep into game logic with code, Skillshare is the perfect platform to level up your creative skills. As the largest online learning community for creatives, Skillshare offers thousands of classes designed by creatives for creative people like us. One of the classes I started just for fun was the C++ Basics, and they also have Unity C# classes if I need to brush up on some skills. And if you're more into the art side of game development, they have plenty of beginner courses for Blender that walk you through from the basics all the way to texturing, rigging, and animating. With Skillshare's on-demand platforms and bite-sized lessons, it's super easy to learn at your own pace and fit it into your dev cycle. Skillshare has a huge variety of classes, from photography, graphic design, music, business, cooking, and more. From beginner to advanced classes, there's something for you. So the first 500 people to use my link in the description will get 1 month free of Skillshare. So join today and start bringing your ideas to life. Big thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring the video. So I started by creating the spawn area. All the textures are seamless and pretty simple. I mean, the garage door is actually just this texture but repeated. In the past, my maps almost looked a little medieval. So this time I want to make sure it has a more rough futuristic look. Also, if you're wondering how I designed the models, I don't. I just start modeling. Often I'll have an idea in my head, like I knew I wanted this to look like a solid futuristic wall. So here's everything modeled and textured. Now, often in game dev, I say less is more, but with game maps, more detail is just more. So I started by adding a bit more details to some of the buildings. I added grass I made in a previous devlog, and I placed a bunch of loot boxes, barrels, crates, and AC units I had also previously made. Now, this is way too perfect and clean looking, so let's add some grime to everything. I could do this with decals, but I think I'm gonna need like 200 of them to cover most of the map. So let's go to my old friend, Unity Shader Graph. So just overlaying another texture was fairly simple, but I want the grime texture to have a consistent tiling across all of the objects regardless of their UVs or scale. So after a bit of research, I found that I can apply the grime texture using triplanar mapping based on world space coordinates. Here we can see the pattern stays in world space even with the cube moving. So after applying it to all sides, creating a grime texture, and fixing a few bugs, we have this. Now after baking the lighting, we have some extremely dark areas, so I think it's time we light up the darkness. I created a wall light, textured it, and then chucked it in the game with an area light. Now after rebaking the lighting, it's looking a lot better. So here's the final before and after we added a lot of detail. There's quite a bit of verticality to this map, which I love, but also means that movement abilities are almost essential to play on this map. So to fix this, I added jump pads. So I altered an old spawn point model, added a particle effect to it, and coded it to launch the player. With that finally working, I placed a few more around the map, added a barrier, and then finally tested the map with my brother. Wow, doesn't that look so fun? I bet you wish you could play the game. Maybe you should wish list it on Steam. Okay, so this map took way longer than expected. So for the next one, I aimed for a quicker build. I chose a shipment theme so I could use my existing container model, and it can replace a lot of buildings. And to save even more time, I made the overall map size a lot smaller. Size doesn't always matter, guys. At least that's what she told me. Once I was happy with the block out, I started texturing the spawn area and added my containers, which just didn't look great. And on top of that, they were actually quite high poly. So I decided to make a new simpler and more performant container. Much better. Only 128 vertices compared to the previous 4,500. Now this looks pretty simple, but don't worry, I'm going to lie to you again and add a lot of detail with just texture. I iterated through a few textures and ended up just using the same panel design as before, but obviously this is only texture, no vertices. I exported the model into Unity and then couldn't decide on the colors. So I made a poll on my Discord, which you should join by the way. Anyway, here's the old container and here's the new container. Remember that the new container only has 3.5% of the vertices as the old. Anyway, let's finish modeling and texturing the map. I managed to complete this in a few days and it definitely helped having a smaller map, but also creating more indoor areas meant I had to create less surrounding buildings. So just like before, it's time to add the extra touches. Previously I had a prefab of glass mesh that I had just duplicated, which I knew wasn't optimal because it would require multiple draw calls. So this time I created the glass in Blender using a particle system, and to lower vertice count I doubled the width of the glass and created a new texture for it. Lastly, I added a bunch of barrels, crates, loot boxes, and lights to light up the darkness. Some of my favourite games actually don't have a minimap, but I don't trust my teammates to tell me someone's behind me. Yeah, I'm adding a minimap. So like the pro developer I am, I found a tutorial online and then decided that I know a better, easier way. Instead of using a second camera to create the minimap, I'm using an image that I created by taking a screenshot of the map and then editing it in GIMP. Then I got it into Unity and started coding it. So, 2 lines of code was all it took. But to be fair, this does just move the map around the player. Next, I need to code the enemies to appear when the player or team players have line of sight, which was surprisingly quite confusing. But eventually we got it all working and coded it with different game modes, such as freefall. Anyway, that's it for this devlog. Don't forget to wishlist the game on Steam, hit subscribe, hit like, join the Discord. Thanks for watching.